Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today's tutorial we are going to be sewing up the Chloe Crossbody. The pattern is by me. Who else? But I really love this design. It was kind of mulling in my head for a while and then I kind of drew it out, made some notes, and then kind of put it to the back burner. But then I decided, you know what? It's time for this bag to come to life. So I sat down and I actually focused on the pattern pieces and decided that some of these pattern pieces needed to be broken up to allow us bag makers to really dip into our creative side. And that is exactly what this pattern does, is it gives you an opportunity to show some creativity. Or you can simply just be basic. I will show you a couple of different ones that I have made, but in the tutorial today, we are going to be sewing up this one. So let's walk through the bag really quick. So the front panels, you have two. You have a side panel and then you have a main panel. This main panel is what I consider a focal point of the bag. This is where you can really let your creative juices come into play. So in here, I took a fun side panel and I kind of incorporated some patches. So these are just some sewn patches on there that I got at the store a while ago, but the colors and the design kind of mimicked what this side panel was, which is just really kind of cool in my opinion. And then on the back of the bag, we have two of those side panels that are similar to this smaller front panel. And we also have right in the middle, it's a little hidden slip pocket. This little slip pocket is just big enough to fit a phone. Now I have the iPhone 17 Pro Max, I believe it is. So it's a pretty big phone and it fits in there pretty good. It's, you know, it fits in there enough for me where I can just very easily pick it up and grab it when it's against my body. So I went ahead and I took that fun panel and I made it one big one to really hide this slip pocket. And then the sides and the gusset. So the sides come together and then the gusset is one piece. And as you can see, she is round. So this right here is a bit on the challenging. This right here is what makes it an intermediate bag pattern. The curves they're not difficult, but they're not super easy for a beginner. And then there's an option to add purse feet. I like to stitch in my Peltex. I like the way the stitching looks. So I do that pretty much with all my bags. I just like that little accent. And then we have these cute little side connectors that we attach our D-rings to, and we use Chicago screws here to attach these connectors to the bag. I chose Chicago screws because the materials I was using were a little bit thicker and I felt that a rivet just isn't always reliable, especially if you don't have a press. So I went ahead and did Chicago screws and I used thread locker and I locked those screws in so they're not coming out. And it also gives you an opportunity to edge coat. So I went ahead and edge coat it in a contrasting color. You don't have to edge coat. You can certainly leave it raw. That's a personal preference. We have a zipper placket, which makes this a drop-in lining. So we're not birthing and we're not binding. So we are doing a drop-in lining. And when you open this up, the inside gives you a slip pocket, and it's a decent sized slip pocket. Gives you opportunity to put a fun woven tag in there if you have one. And then on the other side, we have a zipper, an interior zipper pocket with a overlay. So my overlay that comes with this bag that I came up with, it includes a tab for a D-ring. So it's part of the overlay. So the idea with this is, me personally, I have a key fob that my car, you don't actually need to have the key. You just have to have it on your person. So I generally just take it and I throw it in my bag, which makes it difficult when somebody says, oh, can I get the key to your car? And I have to dig through my bag. So this gives me an opportunity to just kind of snap my key right on there, and it's super easy to find. The drop-in lining it's the bottom, and then you have the top part, which is this part right here. You can do the lining piece for this if you are sewing on a domestic machine to keep the layers down so you don't get too much bulk, or you can do vinyl. I always choose to use vinyl. I used contrasting vinyl on this bag because I thought it was just fun. And then you have your crossbody strap. So the crossbody strap, and then I'll show you what it looks like on. It's not a huge bag, but it's a decent sized bag. And I like the size of it, the design. The gusset is kind of cool. So this is one version that I made with the patches, and the original version that I made, I did this one. So I just did like a pebbled faux reel, and then I did this super awesome pattern. And then on the back side, I kind of did the same thing where my my slip pocket is kind of hidden in there. And then the inside, I have the slip pocket and then the zipper overlay. So that is one. And I also on this one I didn't have at the time the D-ring, so I used 1 1/4 inch circular round rings. They worked fine. It came out great. And then this is another version I made. So this one, I did an embroidery design on it to kind of go with this fun rainbow leopard. And then the back side, I did also in that leopard to hide that slip pocket. And then inside, we went a little on the brighter with the hot pink and then the zipper overlay. So as you can see, you can really, really have fun with this pattern. And if you need more inspiration, there are photos on the website with the pattern from my testers. They did such an amazing job. I am so incredibly shocked at so much creativity in this community and incredibly grateful for each and every one of them. So if you have not subscribed to my channel, please do so below. If you like this video, give it a like. Any comments or questions or anything, go ahead and leave them down in the comment section below. And there is a new option on YouTube where you can hype a video. Apparently it's good. I don't know. It is new, but all those things do help the channel, and I would be greatly appreciated if you would go ahead and do all those things. So let's get sewing.
Okay, so let's go through our pattern pieces really quick. I have my exterior gusset panel, bottom panel. I did go ahead and I sewed on my Peltex, and I added my purse feet as well as fused on my fusible foam, and I did some duct tape over my purse feet. They were not the rivet ones, so I did have to put some duct tape on the bottom. So I have that already prepped and ready to go. I have my exterior main side panel, so you're going to want to cut 2 exterior and 1 exterior mirrored. So my 2 exteriors are going to be of the same, and then my mirrored, I went ahead and did a different one. I also fused my fusible foam on the back according to the directions, making sure that we mark that top with the correct measurement because we're going to need that. And then we have the exterior main right panel, and I also went ahead and fused the fusible foam on that, and I did add on some cute little patches already, and I sewed those on and they are ready to go. Then we have the exterior slip pocket top. So this will be on the back side, and I also went ahead and fused my foam on there. I did mark the top, so this way I am to be sure that I am not going to sew it on upside down, because I do need that extra measurement on the top. And then the exterior slip pocket bottom, I have 2 exterior and 1 lining. I went ahead and already put my bag tag on there according to the directions that I have in the pattern, and I fused my fusible foam on there, and then I have 2 linings. We have the zipper placket. I have 2 exteriors and 2 linings, and I did go ahead and prep those with the measurements and the double stick tape that I have in the pattern. And then we have our lining pieces. We have our interior top lining piece. It does call for 2 lining pieces. I do use the vinyl for this, as you do see this on the outside, and my machine can handle it, but I did go ahead and mark the markings on that as well. And then we have the 2 interior lining bottoms. So I have 2 of those. And then I have my zipper overlay, and I went ahead and already put my double stick tape on there, so that is ready to go as well. I have my 2 pocket linings. I have my slip pocket trim also marked and double stick tape and ready to go. And my interior slip pocket, I have that also marked with my double stick tape and ready to go. And then I also have my strap connectors. It does say to cut 4. I prefer only cutting 2, and then I go ahead and prep this. I will sew this on and then cut it out, so this way they are even. And I already went ahead and fused on my Decaville light. I put my double stick tape, will also glue, and we're going to glue that on, and then we're going to stitch around it, cut it out, and I am actually going to edge paint these while I am doing the rest of the pattern. But once that's all done, so it's all ready to go. So we'll do one together. And then as far as hardware goes, I have my exterior zipper. I have my interior zipper already prepped. I have my webbing, my 2 strap connectors. I have a little woven tag that I'm going to add in there. I also have a cork tag and another woven tag that I'm going to put on the interior. I have my 2 swivel clasps, my 2 D-rings, and my slide adjuster. I have 2 zipper pulls, a zipper end, a small D-ring that we'll use to attach onto the zipper overlay on the interior, and the rivets for that. And then I have the rivets that we will be putting on the webbing as well, because we're going to sew this, and then I'm going to add some rivets, which is optional. You don't have to. If you sew it, you don't have to do the rivets, or you can just do the rivets. It's all a personal preference, but we're going to do both in the pattern today. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we are going to do our connectors. So I did one already. I have already fused on my Decaville light. I put a piece of double stick tape on it. We're going to remove the paper. I'm also going to use some Beacon 3-in-1 glue. I do like the way that this kind of glues around the sides really, really good. Not a ton, but just enough. And then we will glue this to the extra piece, or if you cut out all 4, you'll just glue them together. And I'm just going to kind of use my finger and kind of just go around. And then I'm just going to let that dry really quick. Doesn't take very long. And then I'm going to take it over to the machine, and I am going to top stitch around the edge. Okay, since our connector goes around the top of our bag like this, and then it gets 2 Chicago screws in it, I am going to go ahead and I'm going to start my top stitching on one of the ends, and then I'm going to pull the threads back and I'm going to tie it. Okay, now that we got that top stitched, we're going to go ahead and we are going to just cut around it without actually cutting the top. If you have a silhouette or a Cricut or a Brother scan and cut, there are SVGs in the file, and you can go ahead and cut 4 of these out using your cut machine and just put your Duckaville light on, put them together either by glue or double stick tape, stitch them together, and then you can go ahead and do your edge coat. Okay, so then I'm going to go ahead and I am going to edge coat these with my edge coating just because I like it. I might actually do a contrasting color rather than black just to have something fun. Okay, so we are going to assemble our strap. I like to do this early on so this way I don't have to think about it. And when my bag is done, my bag is done. That's it. So I am going to grab my strap and I'm going to put my adjuster on. And I'm going to take one of my strap ends and take the double stick tape off. And I am going to center that onto my strap like that. And then I am going to basically clip this just like this, and I am going to go to the sewing machine and I am just going to stitch a box 1/8 inch around all 4 edges around the strap end. Okay, so now I'm going to add my rivets. So let's get those marked. You don't have to do both. You can do one or the other. I personally like both, so I'm going to go ahead and grab my hole punch and I'm going to punch those holes. Get those rivets in. Oh, didn't go all the way through. There we go. Webbing's just a little thick. And then we'll set our rivets. Okay. So then we're going to go ahead and we are going to take one of our swivel clasps and we are going to put that on, and we are going to make sure that our webbing does not get twisted here. And we're going to go up and through our adjuster like so, and then we'll grab the other swivel clasp and we're going to put that on, and our strap end. So it's going to go like this. And then we're going to take our little tag, and our tag is just going to slide in there. straight as possible and centered. And then we're going to take this to the machine and we are going to stitch a box around this 1/8 inch from all 4 sides. Okay, so now that that box is sewn on, we're going to go ahead and we're going to add our rivets the same way we did with the other ones. We're going to just mark our little rivet holes. And your strap is done. You can go ahead and set that aside. Okay, so we're going to assemble our front panel, and you're going to take the main front panel, the right side, and the corresponding left side, so you get the 2 straight edges, and you are going to face them right sides together, and you're going to clip them. And you are going to sew down this seam at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, so now before we top stitch, we're going to butterfly our seam. This helps to reduce the bulk down here when we're attaching our gusset, as well as up here when we are going to do we're going to fold this down in order to do the drop-in lining. So as you could see, you know, that's already 3 layers, and then you're folding it down, so it gets kind of bulky. So we're going to butterfly this seam. And what we're going to do is we are going to mark on the top and bottom seam. So on the bottoms, you're going to mark up a 1/2 inch, and you're going to draw a line perpendicular to the stitch line, and then at the top you're going to do a 1 inch line and draw a line. So it's perpendicular to your stitch lines. And you're going to grab your scissors and you are going to cut on that line to the stitch line, but do not cut those stitches. Okay? Then what you'll do is you'll take some double stick tape, and I am just going to add it to the edges on the tops and the bottoms. You don't have to. You can certainly do this with your finger if you so choose. I find that this is easy, especially when you top stitch it. So when we top stitch, we are going to top stitch these seams open. So this way we don't have to worry about them opening at any point. So the way we are going to top stitch is we are going to include this, so take the paper off. Some of those are so tiny. Okay, then we're going to go ahead and finger press those nicely so they are nice and flat. Now the seam naturally wants to go to the left, and I am doing a contrasting on my contrasting thread, so I'm going to want to top stitch on the black. So it's kind of, I gotta kind of maneuver it that way. My machine can handle it, so I'm not really worried about it. But naturally you're going to want to just top stitch on that side. So basically if you're going to top stitch on your smaller piece, you're going to start up here on the main panel and you're going to stitch across and then stitch down 1/8 of an inch and then stitch across. And that's going to tack these butterfly seams open, so this way you don't have to worry about it. I mean, as you can see, like it's already coming open. But because I want my stitching to be on the black, I'm going to have to kind of force this seam over. And I am going to top stitch, but I'm going to start on the bottom. And I'm going to start over here. I'm going to go across and I'm going to come down, catch that seam, and then across. So basically it's like a U, I guess you could say, but we're only top stitching across just to catch these butterfly seams. That way I don't have to worry about it when I'm assembling. Okay, so you can kind of see here how it goes across, down, and then across. And when you look at the back, you've caught both of those butterflies down, so you don't have to worry about them coming back up. And by butterflying it, it's going to make this, when you do your fold down for your drop-in lining, so much thinner, where, you know, having that double seam is would be a bit bulky, especially with your material. So we're done with the front panel. Let's set this aside and we're going to grab our back panel pieces. All right, so our back panel pieces, we have the two side pieces that are mirrored, and then we have our top piece, making sure that our top is our top, and then we have our bottom slip pocket, and then our two linings. So what we're going to do first is we are going to assemble our slip pocket. So we're going to grab our bottom piece, and we're going to grab one of those lining pieces, and we are going to put them right sides together. And we'll clip those. And while we're at the machine, we're also going to take our top piece. Again, make sure the top is at the top, and our bottom lining piece, and we are going to put those right sides together as well, making sure that top piece is still at the top. And we'll clip those. And then we're going to take both of these pieces to our machine, and we are going to stitch across both these short edges at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, once you have those stitched, you're going to just trim your seam allowances down in these corners just a little bit. Depending on the materials you're using, I just use, just cut diagonally. Don't get too close to the stitches. There's like no rhyme or reason or measurements. Just kind of want to reduce the bulk in these corners, because these will get stitched to the sides and it can get quite bulky. So then you're going to go ahead and on the bottom piece, you're going to do your best and finger press this. And I'm going to go ahead and use some clips to help hold this in place. Okay, and then for the top piece, we're going to lift this top up. The seam is going to naturally want to go behind the lining, and that is perfectly fine. and you're going to go ahead and you're going to top stitch both of these at a 1/8 inch seam allowance on the top here, and then on the top portion with the lining, you're going to do top stitch on the lining 1/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're just going to take our bottom and we're going to put it on top of our top, and we're going to line up the seams here on the side, and we're going to clip those all the way down. And the same thing on this side, line up those seams, clip, clip. And then what we're going to do is we are just going to baste this pocket on at a 1/8 inch seam allowance, just kind of go around the 3 sides. You should have your functional slip pocket. Absolutely adorable. So we're going to grab that. We're going to grab our 2 sides, and we are going to line up the straight sides. Now, depending on the materials you chose, you may or may not have a little bit of extra at the bottom of your slip pocket. That is perfectly fine. I did account for at least a 1/8 inch for anybody who has thicker material. So if you're using thicker materials, this seam's going to be a little bit thicker, which you're going to lose that 1/8 inch. So basically you're going to line up the tops of the sides with the top of the top. And whatever the bottom is, we're going to just trim it off. It's better to be a little too long than a little too short, in my opinion. And as you can see, we are like just maybe a 1/16 of an inch, not even. And we're going to go ahead, I'm going to do both of these at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and clip those at the top edge. And then I'm going to clip down. And I'm going to take this to the machine, and I'm going to stitch both of these sides down at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, so before we butterfly our seams, if you have any extra down here at the bottom, you can go ahead and just trim that off. Like I said, you should have, depending on your material, you may have a little bit, you may have none. It all depends on your material. So we're going to butterfly both of these seams, the top and the bottom, the same way we did on the front panel. So from the bottom, we're going to measure up a 1/2 inch. I need my silver. And on this side, the same thing, 1/2 inch. And then on the top, we're going to go 1 inch and do a mark, and do 1 inch on that side as well. So before I cut, I am going to go ahead and reduce some bulk as I have in the pattern. So you can basically remove some of this bulk in the liner. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. You know what? I'm going to cut it first so that way I know where to cut. And then I'm just going to go ahead and only remove the bulk from the lining. We don't want to cut the vinyl, because that's what we need to butterfly. Okay, and I'll do the same thing on the other side. So it's easier to cut into it first because it loosens up those basting stitches. And then we'll cut into the top. Just be careful not to cut your stitches. And then we'll add some double stick tape to the edges of all of those. Like I said, you don't have to use double stick tape if you don't want to. It is an option. I find that it's easier for when I'm top stitching. I don't have to worry about those seams. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and take that tape off. All right, so once all the double stick tape is peeled off, the paper is peeled off, you're gonna go ahead and flatten those butterfly seams. And the bottom should be a little bit easier without that bulk there. And then we're gonna top stitch. So I am going to top stitch on, the seams naturally push out towards the outside, which is perfectly fine because again, I do want to top stitch on this black since it's a contrasting. So I'm going to go ahead and top stitch these seams the same way. So I'm going to start over here on the center panel. I'm going to catch that butterfly stitch, I'm going to stitch across, and then I'm going to stitch down on the side panel, and then I am going to come back across this seam over here. I'm actually going to go all the way across and catch this seam, and I'm going to then come back up this side and go straight across. So I'm going to do it all in one, so that way I don't, this is going to be rebasted since I cut it. So I'm going to go across, down, across, up, and then across. Okay, so our back panel is now done. As you can see, the top stitching, and this is what the back should look like. It should tack down your butterfly stitches, and it's all super nice and ready to go. So now we're going to grab our front panel, and we are going to put these right sides together, and we're going to go ahead and clip those sides. And then we're going to take this to the machine and we're going to sew just down the sides at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, now that the sides are sewn, guess what we're going to do again? If you said butterfly those seams, then you are correct. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to butterfly those seams as well. So we're going to do 1/2 inch on the bottom and 1 inch on the top, both sides. Do double stick tape. Okay, once you have the tape removed from all of your seams, you can go ahead and press that open on the top and the bottom. And I'm actually going to use clips here because we are not sewing these ones down like we did the other ones. So I want to make sure that these stay down for right now, and you'll see why in a moment. So once all these are down, once all those are down, you can see this seam allowance here in the middle. We're going to go ahead and cut that down. So you can cut it down to 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch, depending on how thick your materials are. If you do a second row of stitching, you can do that second row of stitching now, but I'm going to go ahead and do probably about 1/8 of an inch. But if I had thicker materials, I would go ahead and I would do a second row of stitching, and then it would only be 1/4 of an inch. But these are not super thick where I need to do a second row of stitching. And then we are going to make sure our tops and bottoms are all centers are marked, and we're going to grab our gusset. Okay, so with our gusset, we are going to match up right sides together, and we're going to match up all those center points first. And I like to just make sure they stay in place, add a couple of them on either side, and then I'll do the other side. Certainly do not want anything slipping out of place. And then we'll do our sides. And we're going to match that center point on the gusset with our seam. And same thing on this side. And then I am actually going to take my scissors and I am going to mark or snip into my panel a little bit. Not my gusset, my panel, just in here. These curves right here. You want to keep it no more than 1/4 of an inch. We are going to be stitching at a 3/8 of an inch. So we just need it just enough so we can get that gusset in there nicely. And I'm going to do that on both sides. Okay, and then I'm going to continue clipping. Okay, so when you have it all clipped, I don't have a ton of clips in there because I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go around and I'm going to staple. I prefer stapling. This way, when I am sewing, I don't have to worry about the seams in these corners, because these corners right in here are quite challenging. I do it in a couple of steps just to make it a little bit easy. So I will do the curves here first on both sides, and then I go in a different angle and I stitch up the rest. So I will do the curves at the machine here, and then I will switch it. And I do it in a few steps to make it easier on me. You can go right ahead and do it in one step, but I'm going to do it in a few. But I'm going to go ahead and staple. So we're going to take this to the machine and we are going to sew around these curves at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, so I did try and switch the angle. So hopefully this helps a little bit with this angle. And I'm going to try and do it all in one shot. We're going to see how that goes. I prefer doing this angle like this. I tried, but I prefer it like this. Okay, so now that our our gusset is sewn on, before I trim my seam allowance, I do like to flip it just to make sure it looks good. I know it's a lot of flipping back and forth because I sew mine that way when I do my drop-in lining, but I also want to make sure that, you know, my curve is good, and if I need to go back and I need to do anything, I can do it now. So that's what I prefer. So this looks pretty dang good. So I think that actually looks pretty good. Pretty darn good. Okay, so basically we're just going to trim that seam allowance in half. You don't want to go super close to those stitches because this is the base of our bag. but you do want to take some of that bulk out so our curves look good. So super, super carefully, just trim it down. Okay, so now we're going to take the double stick tape, and I like to run it across the top edge. You can run it against the line that you drew in the beginning, because we're going to actually fold down. We're going to use that interfacing as our line because that's basically where that falls in. So I just like to use the top. So, because it's just easier to get the tape on there than trying to get it, you know, just above that line. And basically you are just going to run this tape all the way around your top edge. All right, and then you are going to take off that paper. And you're going to fold that edge down to the line you drew, or your stabilizer, it should be the same. And I'm going to use some clips just to hold it in place. I also like to take my key fob pliers and these seams, give them a good squeeze. This helps to flatten them out a lot to make this, the final top stitching go a lot smoother. And our exterior is done. I keep it this way because I like to do my drop-in lining backwards, because I prefer doing my top stitching on the exterior facing up. So I stitch it like this, and this way I can stitch going on the inside, since I do have a flatbed and not a cylinder arm. If you prefer doing it the other way, then go ahead and flip your exterior right side out. But I'm going to do it this way because this is how I prefer to do my drop-in linings. So we're going to do the zipper placket. So we're going to grab our 2 exteriors and our 2 interiors and our zipper tape. So we're going to prep our zipper tape. So basically you're going to mark one end of it a 1/2 inch up and make a little mark on the edge where the seam allowance is, and you can go ahead and fold this to create a 90-degree angle. You can clip this and then stitch down the side, or you can go ahead and melt it. I prefer melting it. I think it's, well, maybe because I don't know, I just prefer melting it. Carefully though, so you don't burn yourself. I do one side at a time. And then I'll bring it up to the 90 degrees. And then our zipper tape is prep. And then on the back side, I've already done my mark and I put my double stick tape on there. So what we're going to do is we will remove the double stick tape and you're going to fold it to that mark. It is not a very large fold at all. And then I just put some clips on there to hold it in place. If you have a seam roller, if you're using thicker material, then you can go ahead and roll them before you clip them. But it's such a small fold that I just finger press. And you're going to do this for all 4 pieces. So once you have all those, fold it, and you are going to flip them to the right side. And I like to use double stick tape for this next part. You do not have to, you can baste and clip. It's all a personal preference, but I'm gonna basically apply double stick tape to just one edge of all of these. Keep in mind that if you are using a directional print, the edge that you are putting the tape on is the edge that we are attaching to the zipper. The other edge will be attached in between the top and the lining. Okay. I'm going to start with one of each and our zipper. So you are going to make a mark, or you can just use your fold as your guide. But basically it is 1/4 inch in from the edge. You can go ahead and make a mark. However, it's going to be the end of your fold. So whichever floats your boat. I'm going to take that off. We're going to flip our zipper so they are right sides together, and we are going to line the edge of the teeth with that mark, or if you didn't mark it, with the end of your fold right across the top. And you can either clip it, or if you're using double stick tape, just stick it. Now you can go ahead, if you're not using double stick tape, you can go ahead and baste this if you so choose. I prefer just using the tape, and then I'm going to take my lining piece and I am going to take off the paper, and then I am going to line them up edge to edge. And they should line up all the way across, edge to edge. And then you're going to take this to the machine and you are going to stitch at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so now we're going to just remove some of the bulk here, which is why I don't think basting is a great idea, because then you won't be able to remove some of this bulk. So I'm just going to kind of clip this out of the corners without cutting the zipper or the stitching. So we're going to do this a little bit over here. And then on this end, we'll do the same thing. So it's just a little bit like where it's folded over. Oops. And, oh geez. All right, and then we're gonna flip this right sides together. Matching up all those sides. We're going to actually separate the zippers after we get the other side attached. It just helps to keep it oriented. All right. So then what I'm going to do is these corners right here, even though we trimmed, can be quite bulky. And right here as well. So what I'm going to do is I am going to grab my key fob pliers, and I'm going to squeeze those seams to really flatten them out, and boy does that help tremendously. If I haven't stressed it enough with these pliers, I wish I actually had a second set, because I'm constantly moving them around from my table to my machines. All right. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I am going to take this over to the machine, and I'm going to top stitch, but I'm going to start over in here, and I'm going to top stitch down, over, straight down, down, and ending. I want to start and stop on my raw edge side because this will get hidden in our seam when we are attaching it with our lining. So this way I don't have to worry about any back stitching showing. So I'm going to start and stop over here. Okay, so we're going to do basically the same exact thing with the other side of the zipper. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to take our zipper exterior, and we are going to, you can mark the 1/4 inch if you so choose, but I'm going to actually line it up with the other zipper panel. Take these off so that way I can get it lined up nicely. Without sticking to myself. And it lines up perfectly. So once I have it lined up, I'm going to remove that side. And then we'll grab the lining. then I am going to stitch this at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I am going to put right sides together, and then I am going to sew around the top stitch around the entire perimeter, and then our zipper placket will be finished. Okay, so our zipper placket is done. We're going to go ahead and set this aside, and we're going to work on our interior. Okay, so we are going to work on our interior slip pocket. So we're going to put this lining away for 1 second, and we're going to grab our slip pocket lining. On the back side, I've already made the marks, and I put my double stick tape. So we're going to go ahead and take the paper off of that double stick tape, and we are going to fold it into that line, wrong sides together, give it a good press, and we'll do the same thing to the other side. And then we are going to fold wrong sides together up, and we'll just do a little clip on the top. And I'm going to take this to the machine, and I'm just going to baste this top edge of the slip pocket. Okay, now that it's basted, we're going to go ahead and grab our top trim piece. We're going to take off the paper on that double stick tape. And we're going to line this up on the line. Hold it down. Use some clips to hold it in place. I made my trim just a little bit longer. I have a tendency to do that because I want to make sure it fits. And then I am going to go ahead and add my bag tag, or not, my little woven tag right in here. And then I'm going to clip that. Then I'm going to take this to the machine, and I am going to top stitch along this edge at a 1/8 inch seam allowance. And I am going to pull my thread tails to the back and tie them off. Okay, our slip pocket is done, so we are going to grab our lining piece. We're going to make sure our top and bottom centers are marked, and we are going to grab our washi tape, and we're going to make sure it's centered, and 1 3/8 we're going to find the center of our pocket. You can mark that with a little silver pen. Double check, triple check, and then we're going to take this to the machine, and we are going to top stitch around the 3 sides. Okay, so our slip pocket basically is done. I am going to add some rivets in the corners. I do find that it does look nice, but it also keeps it, even though I backstitch and I pulled the threads to the back, there's a lot of tension on this corner here, so I like to add the rivets because I think it just makes it a bit more sturdy, I guess you could say. Okay, so our slip pocket is done. We'll set that aside and we're going to work on the zipper pocket. Okay, so we're going to work on our interior zipper, and we are going to, I'm actually going to measure, and I'm going to use my chalk marker to make sure this stays centered and 1 inch down. So I'm just going to use my chalk marker, and I am going to do that, and then I will find the center of my zipper overlay, mark it with a little silver marking pen, and I'm going to take the paper off the double stick tape, and I will also take the paper off the little tab. I have double stick tape on the tab here. We'll take that off as well. And then we're going to line it up on that line. Make sure it's centered. Perfect. And we're going to grab our D-ring and we're going to slide our D-ring on. And then we are going to tuck this under about 1/4 of an inch is totally fine. We don't want to go too far up where it's going to get in the way of us cutting out our center, but you want to make sure it's far enough where when we're stitching our box at 1/8 inch around, that you will be catching that. So about 1/4 of an inch is totally fine. And if you can see underneath, it's about 1/4 of an inch under there. And I'm going to stitch a box right around. I'm going to pull my thread tails behind. I'm also going to add this cute little cork tag while I'm over at my machine. And I am going to put that in as well. I'll stick that right about here. And I'm going to go ahead and top stitch that on as well. Okay, so now we're going to cut out the center of the lining, being uber careful not to cut your zipper overlay. This does not need to be pretty, as you don't see this except for the video. But I do like to cut it away from where we're going to top stitch, so that way my top stitch does not get wonky from hitting edges. Alright, now we're going to grab our zipper. We're going to make sure that the zipper is going towards the left. I've already added my double stick tape. I find that adding the double stick tape before you add the zipper pull is easier. You can get it on nice and straight, because once you add that pull, you get like these little bumps in there. So it makes it a little difficult to get the paper on there. So we're going to go ahead and take that paper off. And again, making sure that that zipper pull is going to the left. You're going to center it on our zipper tape. Nice and center. We're going to flip this over. We're going to grab one of our linings. We're going to take that tape off the top of our lining, and then we're going to flip it, and we're going to line it up with the bottom edge of our zipper tape. The lining and the zipper tape should be the same size, so it's easy to line them up. Go ahead and press that and flip it back over, and with that zipper panel facing up with the right side against the wrong side, we are going to stitch 1/8 of an inch across the bottom. We're going to go 1 stitch past the edge of each side. So I'm going to start basically 1/8 inch down and 1/8 inch over, and I'm going to go right across the bottom, and then I'm going to stop 1/8 of an inch from the side. Okay, we're going to flip our piece over. We're going to finger press this down best we can. Depending on the material you're using, it just might be a little difficult. I'm using nylon, so it's a little thicker. And then we're going to take our other lining piece. We'll take that tape off, or the paper, and we're going to line that up on the top edge of our zipper tape, making sure the panels meet side to side. Press that down, and then we're going to take this to the machine, and then we are going to finish top stitching around our zipper box. So we're going to start in that same hole that we finished at. We're going to go up the side, we're going to go across, and then we're going to come down that side, and we're going to end up in the same hole that we started with, pulling the thread tails to the back and tying off. we almost have a functioning zipper pocket. So we're going to flip this over, and as you can see, one side's longer than the other. It's just the way we install it. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to trim off, let's do it the easy way. Trim off the excess. And then we're going to basically take it to the machine, and we are going to stitch around the zipper box at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And when we're there, we're going to pull this out of the way, and basically we are going to stitch around all 3 sides at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, our zipper pocket is done. You don't need to trim anything because it doesn't get into the way of anything, so I don't really think that there's any reason why to trim it. So now we're going to assemble our interior pieces. So we're going to need our 2 interior pieces, our 2 top pieces, and our zipper placket. So we're going to start with the zipper panel first. So we're going to put the slip pocket away as well as one of the top pieces. So basically we're going to take our zipper panel piece, face it right side up, and we are going to mark our centers because I realized we did not do that. So we're going to mark the centers of the placket. And this is how our placket is going to go because we want our zipper going to the left. And I am going to take this and we're going to lay this right side up against this, lining up our centers. And you can use double stick tape here. You know what? I am going to use double stick tape. So I'm going to put double stick tape on the back side of my zipper placket. And then I'm going to lay it right side up as well, matching up those center points. And then I'm going to put that side away since now I have the right side. And then our top piece, we're going to use double stick tape on the right side. And we're going to lay this right side down, and we're going to line up the edges. Awesome. And then we're going to take this to the machine and we are going to stitch across this at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. I'm going to take my zipper tail here and I'm just going to clip it so that way it does not accidentally get sewn in here. And we're going to stitch at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, so we are going to top stitch, but before we top stitch, I do want to trim down just these corners a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and trim down these corners. And then when you flip it up, it naturally wants to flip up the placket as well as the line, and that's exactly what we want. And we are actually going to top stitch on the lining at a 1/8 inch seam allowance all the way across. Okay, so we have one lining panel done, and we are going to basically repeat those same exact steps for the other panel. So we're going to grab all our pieces, set that aside, and I am going to put some double stick tape on the back of my zipper placket. And on the bottom edge of my top lining piece. Okay, so I'm going to have my lining panel right side up. I am going to take my zipper placket, take the paper off my double stick tape, and I'm going to lay that right side facing up as well. So now you'll notice that the zipper is going in the opposite direction, which is exactly what we want. So line that up with the center point. I'm also going to take this and put this out of the way. I don't want to accidentally sew over my tail. And then I'm going to take my top lining piece and take the paper off and line it right side down. And I am going to line the edges up and stick that down. Okay, and I'm going to take this to the machine and I'm going to stitch across at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. I'm going to cut the corners, flip it up, and top stitch just like we did in the other with the other panel. Okay, now we have our two interior panels are done. I did go ahead and mark the centers on the top. It's not 100% necessary, but when we fold this down and we're lining the exterior and the interior together to do our final top stitch with our drop-in, I like to have, the side landmarks, but also the center landmarks so I know everything, that there's the same amount on all four sides, if that makes any sense. So it's more so just to have those landmarks and making sure that everything is straight. So with our two lining panels, we are going to put them right sides together, and we are going to clip the sides and the bottoms. Make sure that these seams line up perfectly. And they should, and I'm gonna go ahead and flip those. Okay, and we are going to stitch the sides and the bottom at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. There's no need to taper in and add more for the lining. It is built into the pattern piece itself, so straight seams are perfectly fine. Okay, now we are going to box those corners. So we're going to stick our hand in. We're going to separate the front and back panels. I'm going to pull them aside, and we're going to kind of nest those seams in there, and we'll clip them do the same thing to the other side. Just make sure your bottom seam is going the same direction so that way you don't end up with a little bump at the bottom of your bag. Clip that. I'm going to add some clips to the side, so they don't move on me when I'm at the machine. And then we're going to go ahead and stitch these corners down at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, so our interior is almost done. We are going to butterfly these seams. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to mark the 1 inch on both sides. And then we're going to cut to the stitching. Careful not to clip it. Put some double stick tape on it. I'm going to put some clips to hold this one in place. Okay, and as for the rest of your seam allowances on the side, the bottom, and the corners, you can trim that down to a 1/8 inch. Just being careful down here where it's sewn. Then we're going to take our double stick tape, and just like the exterior, we're going to put the double stick tape all the way around. We're going to take the paper off, and then we're going to fold it down to that mark that we made, and we're going to clip it. Okay, so I went ahead and I flipped my exterior so the right side is out. Normally with a drop-in lining, you would do it reverse, where your exterior would be right side out and your interior would be inside out, and you would drop your lining in and basically try to stitch around the top. If you are like me, I like my top thread to be on the exterior because I'd like to actually see my stitches, you know, super nice on the exterior. So what I have found is by doing a drop-in lining when it's applicable, it's kind of hard when you have a center divider, but if there's no center divider, it's super easy to basically do it inside out. So we're going to take our exterior and we're going to shove it in our interior. It's a little difficult because our interior is a little bit smaller, not a lot, so we don't end up with a baggy lining, but it is definitely manageable, just kind of shoving it in there and clipping. It does take a little bit of muscle to get it in there, but it is doable. So we are going to just make sure that our front panel is on the same side as our slip pocket, and we are just going to take it and shove it in there the best we can. I do have a little bit of double stick tape on my rim right here. I've already taken the paper off just because it's easier to do it that way than after I get it in here. So I like to add a little bit of double stick tape on there to kind of just keep everything in case a clip flies off, which inevitably it does when I'm top stitching. So this way I don't have to stop and readjust like I did with the gusset. So, because when you stop, when you're top stitching, it kind of, you got to tie off those threads. So we're going to take and we're going to line up our side seam first. And before I clip it, I am going to take my key fob pliers and I'm going to squeeze that seam and kind of get it as even as possible so that way I don't end up with any skip stitches. And then I'm going to kind of maneuver my way around the bag. And I'm going to go to the other side seam and line that up. Give it a little squeeze. And clip that. And then I did mark those center markings, and this is why. So I'm going to take those center markings and I'm going to line those up as well. This way I know when I'm fitting it all together So basically we're going to take this over to the machine and I am going to stitch around the whole perimeter. I am going to pull my threads up through the seam. So basically when I start stitching, I'm going to start somewhere in the back, probably, you know, in here somewhere, close to a seam but not quite at a seam. And I am going to stop my top stitching one stitch before I reach the end, and then we are going to use a needle to finish it off. I find that it's easier to get all the threads in the center if they're not all right on top of each other, so you can kind of see which is the ending and which is the start. So we're going to go ahead and do that. You're going to want to be super mindful of your zipper plackets so they don't get stuck underneath when you're top stitching. So you are going to want to make sure, because they automatically want to go up, so you're going to want to make sure that those are pushed down. I would say you can kind of clip it, but I don't know if it's actually going to stay. But we can try clipping it to the top of the zipper and see. We'll work on this together. How's that? All right, so yeah, maybe that might work. Let's see what we can do. I don't know if we can do anything over here though. Let's see if this works. We'll try. It may come out on the bed or get stuck and I'll rip them out, but we'll try. sometimes having something, it'll get caught in one of the seams on the bed. But we'll try and see. So basically I'm going to start in the back. I'm going to kind of start somewhere off to, between the side seam and here, but enough space where I'm not putting my knot on a seam. So probably somewhere in here. Okay, so as you can see, I stopped one stitch, excuse me, before the end. One stitch before the end. So what I'm going to do is I am going to kind of maneuver that seam open a little bit, and I am going to pull two of them to the middle. So these two, I'm going to do the back two. I'm going to pull them up through the middle. So there's one. And two. So I got those two in the middle. So now these two, I am going to use the needle after I cut some of those threads. All right, so I just have a regular needle. It's a fairly large needle since I use a large needle in my machine anyway, so the holes are big, but the eye on it is much bigger, so it's easier to thread. So I'm going to thread one side, so it's the back side, and I'm going to go in through that hole, the ending hole, and then up through that center. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the one on the lining. Is I'm going to thread it, and then I am going to go in that starting hole and up through the center. And now all four of my threads are in the center, and I am going to take them and I am going to triple knot it. And then we're going to clip it. I'm going to take my lighter. I'm going to singe those a little. And tuck them in. All right. And then we're going to flip the bag out. It is easier to do with a blow dryer. I'm not going to lie. So if you have a blow dryer, go right ahead. I generally do use a blow dryer. But for today, we're going to skip it. Will have to iron out some wrinkles, but I think for the most part we are good to go, and that lining fits like a glove. There is no bagginess whatsoever in that lining. Beautiful. those seams out. Super cute. All right, now we're going to attach our connector pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and get all my connector pieces and we'll get those attached. Okay, so I got all my stuff for my connector. I have my key fobs just in case I have a stiletto to help poke out the tools. I have my screwdriver to get my, because we're using Chicago screws, so it requires a screwdriver. My hole punch, I'm using my hand hole punch just because we're going through a lot of layers. I have my connectors, my D-ring. I have my thread locker, which I will be using, as well as I have 8mm. These are 8mm Chicago screws, which are here. I got these on Amazon. They are linked in my Amazon shop. And I also have 10mm, just in case, you know, with the thickness, it's good to, I like to have both on hand. These ones I got on WOAC, but they have all the sizes as well. So they're good. You get like 50 of them. Price wise, this one is 60. Price wise, they're about the same. The first thing we're going to do is I have my strap connectors. I did edge coat them in the pink to kind of match, you know, the pinks in my bag, which I thought was kind of cute. So I am going to take them, make sure I have my wrong side down. I'm going to take my little pattern piece and I am going to line them up so I can mark my holes. The idea with the shape of these is that we are using the Chicago screws, so they do require a larger hole. So I wanted this area where we're going to put the Chicago screws a little bit wider so we are not anywhere near the seam when we're punching holes. So that's why it's an odd shape. Plus I think it looks cool. So my hole punch, I am actually going to use a bigger hole punch because our Chicago screws are a lot bigger than a rivet. So you have to use a little bit bigger of a hole. So I just want to make sure I'm not going too big, because you definitely don't want to go too big. So I generally go a tad smaller than the actual hole I need because vinyl does stretch a little bit. So yeah, that's the size I need. And then I'm going to go ahead and punch my holes in my connector. Okay, I do have, apologize, I had to change the base in my hole punch because it wasn't punching all the way through. So sometimes these metal pieces where it goes does not, it gets worn out, and when that happens, it can't punch all the way through. So you can flip those around, and once you use both sides, then you have to change them. So I had to change it because I've used now both sides. So anyway, we're back and punching my hole. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to take one of our connectors, make sure that the ends that you tied off is towards the inside and the inside of the bag. And I'm going to grab one of my D-rings and put that on, and then I'm going to fit it around the side of the bag. So you don't want it too tight, but you don't want it too loose. And we want to make sure that we have enough space for the D-ring to move where it's not coming down on the side of the bag, but we want it to be like on top of the bag with just enough space, not too much. And then we're going to center it so that way either side, those holes are on either side of your stitch line. So we're not going to be punching through. And when you're happy with it, you take your silver marking pen and mark those holes. Make sure that you're happy with those. I think those are good. And then I'm going to go ahead and punch that. Beautiest. Grab our thing again and lining it up. So I'm going to put an 8mm in one side. Okay, so I'm going to put one 8mm on one side and a 10mm on the other side and see which one I like better. Because you want it to be snug, but you also need it to go through all the layers. You know what, the 8 does come through too, so I'm going to go with the 8. All right, let's take the 10 out. And stick the 8 in. All right, so what I'm going to do is I am going to try and do this on camera. Is I'm going to put a drop of thread locker in there, and then I am going to take the end that has the actual screw pieces in it, and I'm going to put it in and screw it. So let's get those ready, and we'll get my thread locker. I'm going to put a drop of that in. Do your best to get it as tight as you can. It's a little difficult because there's nothing to hold on to on the other side because the other side is nice and thin. All right, and then I'll do the same thing. We're going to poke that through. And then we'll put a drop of our thread locker on. And then we'll grab our screw. One connector is it. So we're going to do the same exact thing to the other side. I'm going to get these out of the way for a minute. Definitely don't want to hole punch those. You'd be very angry at yourself. Alright, so we're going to grab our other connector, put our D-ring on it, and this is the back. So we're going to go this way. Okay, and then we're going to take our Chicago screws. So it's the smooth side that goes on the outside. zippers are on. Woohoo! Almost done, guys. We just got to put our zipper on and our zipper end, and then we are done. So let's get that. And we're going to keep our thread locker out because we do have so I have these cute zipper pulls from Georgia Girl Stitchers. I love these. And my zipper end has a screw in it, so we're going to take that out. And we're going to install our zipper pull. To zip it up to make sure that it is even on the end, and then it's up to you. It is a long thread tail. If you want to trim some off, which I usually do, I don't like it super thin or super long, so I will just take it and I'll lop off an inch or two, and then don't forget to singe those ends back up. And then we're going to put our zipper end in. I did grab my Beacon 3-in-1, so I'm going to put a little bit inside there. And we're going to fold this, and we're going to insert this in there. Okay, when it's nice and inserted, I like to move my bag around so I can get to the end. And I'm going to punch a hole in there, and then I'm going to put a little bit of my thread locker in. Just be careful you don't put too much. It's a very, very small amount, but and then screw it in. Perfect. All right, now we just got to grab our webbing. Okay, so we just have to attach our webbing, and you can thank me now that it is done in the beginning. And we'll attach our webbing, and that's it. We are done.
Well, what did you think? She's pretty good. She's a pretty good bag. It's so much creativity. I cannot wait to see all the creative Chloes out on social media. So if you make one, please tag me at Strings to Things. I would love to see it, share it, get inspired by it. I am so looking forward to seeing what everybody comes up with this bag, and I'm super excited. And thank you for joining me. Have a great day, guys.